Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Galactic Lounge. It's been a couple of weeks since we did one of these. I have a very special guest with us today. Rebecca Nicholson is going to talk to us. Well, first of all, I should say Rebecca has a PhD in conflict analysis and resolution, and she wants to talk to us today about the intersection of conflict resolution and astrology. So, Rebecca, why don't you tell us a little bit about your work?
Michael, thank you so much for having me on, and everybody
Pleasure.
who's joining us. I'm very happy to see you all here. Don't really see you all at all, but happy you're here. Well, just to give people some context, because not everybody knows what conflict resolution is. The working definition of conflict is the real or perceived blocking of goals between two or more interdependent parties. That means all the way from international conflict, armed conflict, war, political conflict, down to national conflict, organizational conflict, governments, businesses, family structures, all the way to internal conflicts. That's what my field encompasses.
Just interjecting there briefly, can you repeat, would you do this for me? Would you repeat and emphasize especially that last one about internal conflict?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a good one.
The field encompasses everything from armed conflict, what we know as war, all the way to internal conflict.
Yeah.
And internal conflict is one of, I would say, the biggest driver. And that can be internal conflict within an individual, or that can be the internal conflict of a population.
Yeah.
So that's like my work is identifying the hidden drivers of conflict from an individual all the way to a collective perspective. So when I work with clients, maybe this is the easiest way to show you, I work in a number of different ways. And I focus on the conflict science, which is all the forms of conflict that are affecting you. And this is personal conflict, interpersonal conflict, all the way to structural conflict. So when we're dealing with things like racism, sexism, structural inequalities, oh my God, those are real. But it's just pointing out exactly the way that those affect you. That's where people don't really understand it because it's a little bit of a gray area. So that's what social science do, or point these things out. Right? So it's trauma informed also when I work, because the trauma they're very much the hidden drivers. So depending on where we are, where we've come from, that is always going to affect the way that we step into conflict. I focus also on a mind-body connection. In addition to the conflict science, I also do Ayurvedic body work. I do energy healing. I'm an intuitive. I practice mediumship. And this is all relatively new stuff. But conflict embeds itself in our body. And so to ignore that and act like it's not happening would be an incredible disservice to whoever I'm working with.
And would probably lead to greater conflict.
It does. All you do is stifle it. I use Vedic astrology, especially the nakshatras, because when one understands their energetic components, the life makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
And finally, I focus on a holistic resolution. And for that, I will say, in all of my conflict studies, there was nothing that prepared me for what my life is. Nothing.
Yeah.
So I could look at it from the standpoint of, I've taken these steps, I've done these things, so the math should add up to a certain outcome, but that outcome never came. Never came. Despite anything I did, It just never came. So it's not always a matter that you work hard and you do certain things, and then the end result is a product of what you put into it. It's not like that at all. So why I really appreciate Vedic astrology, in addition to other divinities, is because without those, I would not understand my existence. And so in my own practice, I think leaving those parts out those so like those invisible, those spiritual components, it just eliminates the context. And without that context, your life does not have the richness that you actually know that it has. So any type of explanation, any type of helping you get through something, it doesn't involve the layers that your conflict actually has.
Yeah. I resonate a lot with what you're saying with that. Yeah, mainly from the perspective, I find quite often with astrology, just astrology itself, that people are quite often looking for, I always use the analogy black and white answers when it's like Technicolor. And it's difficult for people to understand that. People are always wanting yes or no. And sometimes it's a matter of yes, but, or no, but. And it's just so many different layers that we're dealing with in any situation. And yes, when you begin to exclude those layers, you're missing like the totality of the individual. Every person isn't just a person who's going to get a job or not get a job, or going to become a millionaire or not become a millionaire. There may be somebody who becomes a millionaire, but then their relationships fall apart and everything else gets really difficult, or they don't have any money, but they lead exceptionally happy lives. And I think that that's something that gets missed by I would say, a lot of approaches to astrology or even life in general. And sometimes we think we want one thing and we exclude the other parts of our being from that pursuit. It's not in alignment with who we are. But one part of us goes, gee, wouldn't it be great if I had this dream house? But I'm really not that person. Or wouldn't it be great if I had this, huge job, but I'm not going to be happy in it, really.